Such great things can become possible for you if you change the way you feel about yourself. Neville Goddard used to talk about this in one of his lectures, and actually most of his lectures, but one of them specifically was called Changing the Feeling of I. To this video, I want to explain this a little differently and hopefully make it a little easier for you to understand how to go about this concept, because it's true. Once you change the way you feel about it, your future will change dramatically. I mean, the possibilities that will become available to you change like night and day. It's no joke. So if you feel bad about yourself most of the time, well, that's one of the reasons why it's harder for you to achieve your wildest dreams. But once you start feeling good about yourself, man, your life will change for the better. The results will follow the impression you created within your own conscious and subconscious mind. So let's get into it. Alright, welcome back. Changing the feeling of I. Well, Neville Goddard used to talk about this concept in one of his lectures. And what he's essentially talking about is that we need to change our subjective concepts about who we are, about what we feel that we're capable of doing. Now, this is such a subtle thing if you think about it, because our feelings are, as we like to say, part of the emotional mind, part of the subconscious mind. So in order to change the feeling you have of yourself, well, you first want to use your conscious mind. You don't want to let it up to chance or something randomly happening to you. Because in the end, there are two ways to change an idea within your subconscious mind. There are two ways to change how you feel about yourself. One is an emotional impact, where something very violently or extreme happens to you out of nowhere that makes such a drastic impact on you emotionally that you change entirely as a person because of it. Now, this usually happens in the case of something very negative, so it explains why people can end up being traumatized by an event. Another one is constant spaced repetition. It's where you consistently affirm a new idea through your consciousness and let it sink into your subconscious mind. Now, what we mean by this is, at first you start with a better idea of what you want in life, of who you want to be in life, what sort of person you would like to be. And then as you have that concept in your consciousness, by constantly affirming it for yourself, by constantly focusing on it day in and out, you can start to learn to identify yourself emotionally with that change of self. So the way that I would describe this, hopefully in an easier method, is that I personally look at myself mentally, how I would be if I now had achieved what I want, and as I do that, I rejoice in that. I literally do. It's kind of fun even talking about it, but what I would do is lay down, for example on my couch, even behind me, I would just lay down, close my eyes, and I would imagine the sort of results that I'm after. I would clearly see in my imagination what sort of person I would be had I achieved certain results. And then I literally and simply feel joy for it. I fall in love with it. I become passionate about that idea that I first built in my consciousness. Now, by this process, that is how you change the feeling of yourself that you have about yourself. Because a change of feeling will cause a change in destiny. Because we always act upon the things that we're most emotionally involved in. Sadly though, most people have a very negative self-image, negative feelings about themselves, perhaps based on past failures, perhaps because of what people are telling them currently. People might mock their dreams, they feel bad about it, and then they don't really effectively express and execute the very dreams they hold in their hearts. But through this method, it's basically a method of auto-suggestion, of self-persuasion. You learn to change that all around for the better, and then you'll be able to grow towards those marvelous dreams that you still hold within your own soul. Now, changing subjective trends is a fascinating aspect. It is so important yet so subtle, as we said before, because we're dealing with our emotions. Now, the question you should ask yourself is, how are you feeling on a daily basis? Is it good or bad? Do you really feel passionate about where you're going in your life? Do you really feel excited? Do you really know for sure that this is where you want to go, whatever the goal is that you've set for yourself? If so, adjust yourself accordingly, and you can magnify this adjustment by considering on a daily basis again how you would feel if your dreams were now realized. Because this is the subtle thing again. This is what you clearly want to burn into your mind, is that if you can imagine whatever it is that you want, you already possess the essence of its manifestation within yourself. Because the manifestation is like a replica of something you've first built in your consciousness. So again, by changing the way you see and feel about yourself within your consciousness, the physical life, the physical results will adjust themselves according to that change that you first created within yourself. Now, what are most people trying to do? They're trying to change something outside of themselves. They're waiting for circumstances to improve. They're waiting until they feel better. Now, that's interesting. Why would we wait until we feel better to do something? Why don't we just learn how to change our feelings at will? Now, this is tricky at first because most of us aren't trained or raised to do it like this. We basically allow the physical world to control our inner world of emotion and thought and imagination. But by learning to direct your own emotional self at will, you see that you're no longer dependent on anything around you. You literally aren't dependent on anything. Because you see, this whole world that you're observing around you, in your room, in my room, it's just a shadow world, you could say. It's a replica of mental conceptions. Now, what sort of concept do you hold of yourself? This is important. This is what I want you to think about very clearly. If you want to change the feeling of yourself that you have about yourself, you're going to have to look at yourself first and foremost through imagination from a different, better angle. So whatever the goal is that you've set for yourself, see yourself achieving it passionately, successfully, with conviction, with belief and trust in yourself. See all these elements within your imagination first and foremost, and then allow them to dominate you emotionally. You do this again by clearly knowing what sort of person you would be had you realized your dream. Because the clearer you make it, the easier it is to become emotionally involved in that imaginary state. And that is when the emotional self starts to change around. Again, that is when the feeling you have about yourself starts to adjust itself according to a bigger, better version of yourself that you've built through your imagination. And this is one of those subtle things that humanity has to learn. Sadly, we aren't raised like this. I wasn't raised like this. I know my friends weren't. Most of society isn't raised like this. Perhaps 90%, if not more, of the people out there, when we go outside, weren't raised to live from the inside out. They were raised just to go about how circumstances dictate they should live. But you see, you're a creator. Your mind is creative. It's a creative power given to you by the universe. And through that power, you can adjust anything you want. But first, you're gonna have to understand the basics. And the basics are, we gotta learn how to control our minds. Because once we learn how to control the mind, once we put in the effort, put in the work to do this, then we'll be in the position to control our physical lives. You see how powerful this is? You see the possibilities that lay dormant within you by simply changing how you feel about yourself? So again, let me ask you, how do you feel about yourself? Is it good or bad? Just try to make an effort to aim it towards the direction that it's good. So you want to be involved in activities that will help you and stimulate good feelings. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? However, again, a word of warning is always that we want to do this with wisdom. We don't want to use physical means to feel good, because feeling good, like happiness, it comes from within. So no matter where you stand right now in your life, are you able to feel good? Because this is what we're asking of you to do. By feeling good right now, even in negative physical circumstances, you are changing the feeling you are holding about yourself, and by the change of feeling within yourself, you'll automatically become compelled to do things differently over time. And as you do things differently, You're outgrowing your current reality, the way it is. So if it's negative right now, for most of us it is, or at least it's not the way we entirely would want it to be. Through this method, through these steps, we learn to outgrow our current circumstances and end up in better ones. We end up with better results. And that's something you want, don't you? There's stuff in your life that you would like to improve. Well, again, this is another way of going about it. By simply changing the way you feel about yourself. And the most important part to remember is that we want to feel good as much as possible. Sometimes bad stuff happens, we don't feel as good. But we want to feel good as much as possible, because the better we feel, the greater results are going to become in your life. Just let it sink in, just contemplate this deeply. Just sit back in your chair, think about it. Just really let it sink in. This is so powerful once you grasp it. It will change your future in such drastic ways for the better. You can hardly imagine what it would really do for you once you really grasp the importance of feeling good right now. Therefore, the way we feel about ourselves should be positive, not negative. If negative stuff happened to you in your past, let it go. You have to let it go. And you have to replace that mental conception of negativity with positivity, with optimism, with where you want to go. And by allowing that to dominate your consciousness, that is when the feeling you have about yourself changes for the better, and you can manifest much greater things than you ever did before. So there you go. The important part about changing the feeling of I, the important part to remember that is that if you grasp that the way you feel determines the way you act, you understand the importance of feeling great as much as you can. You understand the importance of working at it to the best of your ability, because the greater you feel, the more compelled you become to act in a great way. And as you start acting in greater and better ways in your own world, your results will adjust themselves accordingly. You see, the issue is people wait too long. They don't feel like it. They feel bad right now, perhaps because something bad may have happened even, but we want to understand that even though bad things happen, if we make the effort to feel good, most of the time, the universe will help us manifest whatsoever we want. Now, this video needs some serious contemplation on your part, again, to ask yourself, how do you feel most of the time? Is it good or bad? Be honest with yourself. And if it's bad, don't feel dismayed. You can feel great all the time. You can work towards it. You have a mind. You control your own mind. Now use your own mind. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.